Hi, I'm Nerese. I closed a $15 million deal that should have changed my life, only to come home and find out I didn't have one anymore. My parents kicked me out that same night. My brother erased my name from every contract. The company I helped build fired me with an email. No warning, no voice. And the worst part? They didn't just replace me. They rewrote the story, word by word, like I never existed. So how did I go from being their invisible pawn to the woman they now pay to keep quiet? Wouldn't you want to know what happened next? I didn't expect confetti or champagne, but I also didn't expect the silence. By the time I pulled into the circular driveway of my family's estate in Savannah, the sky had dipped into that soft gold hue just before dusk. The deal, the one that had taken nearly 8 months of grinding negotiations, 12 red-eye flights, and enough coffee to kill a weaker woman, was signed. $15 million. Closed. Done. I thought the hardest part was over. My suitcase rolled along the familiar brick walkway, its wheels echoing under the arched porch. The porch light flickered on, as if surprised by my presence. I adjusted my blazer, checked the crease in my trousers one last time, and pressed the doorbell. Once, then twice. It was Mom who answered. Her eyes blinked with a moment of confusion. Not joy, not surprise, confusion, like I was a solicitor who had arrived during dinner. "Nerese?" she said, as if unsure. "I thought I'd surprise you," I said, keeping my voice light. "I wanted to share something big. I just closed—" "You should have called," a voice cut in from behind her. "Lucan, of course." He stepped beside her, leaning one shoulder casually against the doorframe. He was still in his pressed slacks, shirt sleeves rolled to just the right height, his casual power pose. He looked me up and down. "You're early," he added. "We weren't expecting anyone." I hesitated, suitcase still in hand. "It's the Breyer-Kensington deal. It closed this afternoon. I wanted you all to be the first to know." There was a beat of silence too long for comfort. Mom tilted her head slightly. "That's nice, dear. You look tired. Have you eaten?" No congratulations, no hug, not even a flicker of recognition. I could hear the clinking of forks in the dining room. They had already sat down to eat. Lucan gave a short nod toward the inside. "You're welcome to stay, of course. Just, give us a heads up next time." I followed them in, every step echoing against the cold marble. The table was set for 4. One extra plate had been added haphazardly when they realized I wasn't leaving. Dinner was functional. They talked about lawn renovations, Lucan's upcoming speaking engagement in Charleston, and something about Isolde's charity gala. No one asked about my deal again. I tried twice to steer the conversation, but Lucan veered it away with surgical precision. "Guess it's not a celebration unless your name's in the headline, huh?" he said at one point with a smirk. I smiled, the way people do when they know better than to bark in a room full of wolves. I excused myself early and carried my suitcase upstairs to my old room. The door creaked in a familiar way. The smell was the same, a mix of lemon polish and faint lavender. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my phone. Messages from my assistant, a dozen congratulatory texts from colleagues, a voicemail from the client calling me the engine behind this deal. Not one from my family. I powered off the phone. In the silence, I remembered what Grandpa Abram used to say when things felt too quiet. "Don't let silence rewrite your worth." It was a sentence I hadn't thought about in years. And now, it was all I could hear. The next morning, I was woken not by sunlight or birds, but by a gentle knock. Mom stood at the door, arms crossed. Not angry, not loving, just formal. "Your father and I think it's best if you find somewhere else to stay for a while." I blinked, still foggy with sleep. "Wait, what?" She didn't shift. "It's not a punishment, but you came without warning, and, well, Lucan needs the space. It's just best." "Did I do something wrong?" She paused. "You didn't ask." I didn't argue. There was no use. The decision had already been filed, signed, and executed behind closed doors, just like Lucan's so-called leadership deals. I packed slowly, every blouse folded carefully, every pair of shoes wiped clean. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me scramble. Through the window, I saw Lucan and Isolde on the lawn, laughing with the ease of people who had already rewritten the story and assigned everyone their new roles. At the front door, Mom handed me a white envelope. "We'll send the rest of your things later." I nodded. That was it. No drama, no screaming, just quiet exile in pressed slacks and polite phrasing. As I rolled my suitcase back down the brick path, I wondered when the celebration had turned into a removal notice. Funny how success makes you disposable in the wrong household. I still had no idea that while I was leaving my family's house, I was also being erased from the company. I didn't cry. Not then. Not when the words appeared in bold at the top of my screen like a legal obituary. Termination confirmation. Effective immediately. It came through just after 10 a.m. I was still parked outside the estate, engine humming softly while I scrolled through my phone, thinking maybe I'd grab coffee before hitting the road. Instead, I got a bullet between the eyes. Clean, corporate, without ceremony. No phone call, no warning. Just a cold email from HR with words like restructure and alignment and we wish you the best in your future endeavors. They didn't even have the decency to lie to my face. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I reread it once. Then again. The sentence didn't change. My name was there, so was the company letterhead, but none of it felt real. It was as if I was watching it happen to someone else. 10 minutes earlier, I'd walked out of my childhood home, told myself it didn't matter that no one cared about the $15 million I brought in. But this was a different kind of dismissal. This was erasure. I tried logging into my company dashboard. Access denied. I reached for my wallet, tried the corporate card at the gas station across the street. Declined. They weren't just letting me go. They were wiping me clean, like I'd never existed. I sat in my car, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. My lipstick was smudged, my hair still held from last night's effort to look accomplished. But my eyes, those didn't look like mine. They looked like a woman who just realized her own brother had gutted her from the inside out. The phone rang. Lucan, of course. I stared at the screen for a second before answering. "Hey," he said, as casual as someone calling to confirm brunch reservations. "I heard you got the email." "You knew?" My voice cracked, not from tears, but from the sharp edge of disbelief. "It's not personal," he replied smoothly. "We're restructuring. New directions. You know how it is." "You're firing me the day after I closed the biggest deal in company history?" "Technically," he said, and I could hear the shrug in his voice. "You're being transitioned out of your role. It's a nuance." I bit down hard on my bottom lip. "You used me to land that contract, then cut me out the second it was signed. There's a non-disclosure agreement waiting for you," he said. "If you sign, we'll make sure you're taken care of. Quietly, generously." "You want me to disappear." "I want you to be smart," he replied. "You can either walk away with something or stay and make a mess for yourself. Either way, your name's already off the masthead. That part's done." I didn't respond. He didn't need my permission to betray me. He already had. The line went dead. For a while, I just sat there, staring through the windshield. The sunlight looked too bright for what had just happened. A bird landed on the hood of my car and hopped twice before flying away. I envied its exit. I didn't drive home right away. I didn't know where home was at that moment, so I just drove. No destination, no music, no GPS, just road. In the silence, my thoughts rewound and replayed everything. The meetings I led, the nights I spent in hotel lobbies reworking pitch decks, the mock presentations, the pre-meeting strategy calls, all mine, all buried now under Lucan's signature and a press release that would name him the visionary behind it all. At a red light, I pulled out a worn notebook from my bag, flipped past scribbled budgets and diagrams until I found the quote I'd written months ago from Grandpa Abram. "If your name isn't in the credits, rewrite the whole damn script." I stared at those words for a long time, and something inside me shifted. Maybe I didn't need their stage. Maybe I could build my own. That night, I didn't sign their non-disclosure, but I did sign something else, an intent to uncover everything. The library parking lot wasn't where I thought I'd spend the aftermath of being erased, But after circling Savannah for almost 2 hours with no real direction, it was the only quiet place I could park and think. I didn't go inside, I just needed Wi-Fi and answers. From the front seat of my car, I connected to the public network and opened the cloud portal I had used daily for the past 3 years. The screen blinked. Then a red message. This account is no longer authorized. It didn't ask for verification. It didn't offer a help desk number. It just locked me out like a burglar at a country club. I tried my backup email, the one I used for internal notes. Nothing. My fingers hovered over the keypad. I typed in my assistant's name and hit send. The reply came back instantly, an auto-response. Recipient not found. This address no longer exists. I leaned back in my seat, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling of my car. They weren't just scrubbing me from the system. They were unpersoning me. Every contribution, every sleepless night, every pitch I led, gone like it never mattered. I pulled up the last legal correspondence I had access to, the agreement from the Kensington pitch, the one I'd rewritten 3 times because Lucan didn't bother reading the brief. I'd sent the final draft from my personal email for backup. There had to be something left. As I dug through files, the knock on my passenger window made me jolt. It was Mom. I hadn't seen her since she handed me that envelope at the door the morning before. No calls, no texts, just a gentle knock at my window like nothing had happened. I rolled it down slowly. She didn't smile, didn't greet me. Instead, she handed over a small canvas tote with my name embroidered in gold thread, something she'd given me in college. Inside were a few toiletries, my old planner, and a cardigan I'd left in the hallway closet. I thought you might want these. Is this supposed to make it better? I asked, trying to sound neutral, not brittle. She looked away. Don't make this worse than it is, Nerisse. My laugh was short and sharp. You kicked me out of your house 24 hours ago. Now you're hand-delivering shampoo like it's some peace treaty? You're choosing them, I added, voice low. She hesitated before answering. I'm choosing peace. That's different. No, I said, eyes locking on hers. It's not. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, like she wanted to believe the version of herself that didn't look like betrayal. She turned without another word and walked away, steps quiet on the gravel. She didn't look back, and that was louder than anything she could have said. I sat there until her car disappeared from the lot. Then I started the engine and drove downtown, straight to my uncle's law office. Raymond Calloway had always told me, "You ever need anything, day or night, my door's open." He was the only adult who ever said he believed I could run the company, and he meant it, or at least he used to. The receptionist recognized me instantly. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway like I was a problem walking in with heels. "He's in a meeting," she said, folding her hands quickly. "It might be a while." "I'll wait," I said. She didn't offer water. 2 hours passed. I scrolled my phone, checked old emails, pretended I wasn't watching the door. Eventually, a younger assistant walked over quietly and placed a folded note in front of me. "Mr. Calloway has been advised not to involve himself in internal family disputes at this time." That's what I was now. A dispute, not a niece, not a former executive, a complication. I left the building without tearing the paper in two. In the car, I didn't cry. Not from sadness. Betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it just politely declines your appointment. It was evening now. The sun was settling low, casting a soft amber glow through the city streets. I pulled over near River Street, opened my tablet, and logged into the Georgia State Business Registry. I entered the date range for the last 6 months, filtered by Breyer Group Holdings, dozens of filings. My fingers moved quickly, contracts, vendor updates, new subsidiary formations. Then I found it. A filing dated 3 days before the Kensington contract closed. Lead negotiator, Lucan Breyer. I stared at it, not just the name, the description, the strategic structure, the timeline. It was mine. Every part of that project had been constructed by me, on my laptop, during calls I led, while Lucan was busy giving press interviews he didn't deserve. They didn't just erase me, they replaced me. I sat back in the seat, tablet in hand, streetlights beginning to blink on outside my window. The river was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew this much. I wasn't going to let them write the ending. I stared at the filing, and all I could think was, what else did they steal while I was busy earning it? I had to read the document 3 times before the bile in my throat turned into steel in my spine. Sunday afternoon, I was at the small kitchen table in my midtown apartment, surrounded by half-drunk coffee and a printer that sounded like it might break down at any second. The paper still warm in my hand showed Lucan's name in bold as strategic lead on the Kensington deal, a deal I had built from the ground up, brick by damn brick. I flipped through old calendar invites, tried to trace back the project timeline. The meeting notes I sent, missing. The slide decks I had uploaded to the shared drive, archived under someone else's login. Email chains had gaps. My name was either cut out completely or repositioned in the CC line like an afterthought. They didn't just cut me out. They edited me like I was never real. I sat back and stared at the ceiling fan slowly turning above me, the blades clicking softly like a metronome counting down my patience. The audacity wasn't what stunned me. It was the precision, the way they'd gone through digital records like surgeons with scalpels, scraping me off the history books without leaving a trace. That's when the text came through. No name, no greeting, just a single image. An email screenshot. I didn't need to check the number. The message was from a former colleague who'd quietly watched me fight to be seen. The subject line, narrative adjustment, merger's leadership attribution. Lucan had written, "Make sure press releases frame this as a Breyer family vision project." Another line further down chilled me more than the email itself. "We'll present Nereese's role as supportive, not primary, friendly tone, legacy nod." Marketing does it all the time. That's what people say when they're lying with style. I stared at the message for a long time, not angry, not surprised, just clearer. The next morning, I made a phone call to confirm a brunch reservation under a name I hadn't used in years. Callaway. Not Breyer. When I walked into the garden patio at the Breyer Group's private club, heads turned, not because they missed me, but because I wasn't supposed to show up. Lucan was standing near the mimosa bar, telling some investor from Atlanta how much pressure he was under managing vision alignment at scale. I didn't wait. I walked straight up to him, the printed contract in hand, folded once with purpose. No shaking hands, no raised voice, just steady steps. "Here's the paperwork with your name on what I built," I said, placing it on the table in front of him. Lucan blinked, all smiles gone. "Nerese, this isn't the place. You stole my name, my work, my worth." He leaned back, lips twisting. "No one cares who wrote the plan. They care who sells it." That was his truth, not mine. Before I could respond, Isolde stepped in with her smooth PR smile, always ready to patch leaks. "You're making this a scene," she said with a soft, patronizing tone. "We're a family, not a court case." I looked at her, then back at Lucan. My voice didn't rise. "You're right. Courts have rules. This family doesn't." It wasn't a scream, but it echoed louder than anything I'd said in years. I didn't stay long after that, didn't wait for dessert or discussion. I turned and walked out with the same steady pace I came in. Behind me, I could feel the shift. Executives whispering, glances exchanged, conversations paused. Maybe they wouldn't stand up for me, but they'd start asking questions, and sometimes that's all you need. Back home, I opened a new document and titled it Timeline of Erasure. I began logging every file I'd created, every meeting I'd led, every signature Lucan had forged with a polished smile and hollow words. Then I picked up the phone and called the county record office. "I need to see every business filing made in my name in the last 60 days. There was a pause on the other end. "Are you preparing for something, Ms. Callaway?" "Yes," I said calmly. They said I made a scene, but that was just the trailer. Monday morning found me hunched over a bitter coffee in a cafe that smelled like scorched toast and cleaning fluid. I hadn't slept much. After what happened at the brunch, the adrenaline had kept me awake, and the rage had kept me upright. I wasn't looking for a fight that day. I only wanted a quiet space and a strong cup of something that didn't remind me of betrayal. But the second I unlocked my phone, I knew peace wasn't in the forecast. I'd been tagged in a video on social media by my cousin Allegra. She was standing in a tastefully decorated living room, one of those staged influencer spaces filled with pastel cushions and fake books. Her tone was syrupy sweet. "Sometimes," she said to the camera, "people confuse temporary work with legacy roles. Stay in your lane, babe." She winked. The caption read, "Family businesses don't need spectators." The comments were fast and ugly. Some knew it was about me. Others just joined the pile-on. "Some people just can't handle not being the star. She's always had main character syndrome. This isn't high school, it's business." I didn't flinch. I took a screenshot, saved the video, filed it with the rest. In a digital age, gossip doesn't need to be true to ruin you. All it takes is a tone, a camera, and an audience hungry for drama. And Allegra, bless her, knew how to feed them. I left the cafe after 2 more sips of coffee I didn't finish, went straight back to my apartment, and opened the Breyer Group's website out of pure self-punishment. There it was. The homepage. A bright banner reading, "Visionaries of the Future." Lucan was front and center, arms folded, a half-smile that said nothing and everything. Isolde stood beside him, her perfect PR poise intact. Underneath them, bold text outlined the Kensington deal, phrased like it had been his brainchild, his negotiation, his execution. Then the kicker. Breyer Group celebrates bold leadership and a legacy of innovation. Legacy. That word again. I scrolled further and found a group photo titled, "Team Behind the 15-Alarm Pivot." There were 8 people. I wasn't one of them, not in the corner, not in the back, not even blurred out. I wasn't invisible. I was redacted. The kind of rage that builds without sound began to ripple through me. It wasn't a scream. It was a stillness that turned sharp, controlled. I walked to the closet and pulled out an old banker's box. Inside, my original meeting notes, client call summaries, annotated drafts, recorded voice memos from internal review calls. I plugged in a hard drive and started digitizing everything. By noon, I had a folder titled Truth. I logged into LinkedIn, drafted a post, erased it, drafted another. This time, I didn't delete. When you build something with your bare hands and they put someone else's name on it, do you stay quiet or do you speak? I clicked Post and attached a side-by-side comparison of my time-stamped slide deck and the one Lucan used at the gala. The notifications started instantly. Likes, shares, comments. A message came in from someone I barely knew from our finance team. "We always knew it was yours." Another from a partner in Boston. "Braver than most." Lucan called. I didn't answer. Isolde texted, "Take it down. This helps no one." I replied without hesitation. It already helped me. Then I contacted a friend from law school, now working as a compliance attorney. "Document everything," she said. "Say less, show more." I printed everything I'd digitized, compiled it into a binder, and mailed a notarized affidavit to a third-party legal service in Atlanta. I wanted a dated record, something outside their reach. If they were going to play corporate, I'd play constitutional. By nightfall, the post had over 20,000 views. Half the Breyer board was following my account. My name wasn't silent anymore. They wanted me erased from the room, so I built my own. It started with a letter, not email, not a call. A letter, white envelope, gold-stamped logo on the back, delivered to my mailbox like it was just another credit card promotion. Inside was a 3-page tax notice, drafted by Breyer Group's legal team. Cold, precise. It claimed I owed deferred compensation taxes related to the Kensington deal, income I had never received, bonuses, options. A profit-sharing line I never signed. They used my name to file it, but not to pay it. I stood in the hallway of my apartment, holding the letter with both hands. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. They weren't just trying to erase me. They were repositioning me as the liability, the scapegoat. If the IRS ever came sniffing, it wouldn't be Lucan in their crosshairs. It'd be me. I sat at the kitchen table, rereading the document line by line, pen in hand, circling phrases that made my stomach knot. named stakeholder, project associate, adjusted earnings, words that meant nothing legally unless someone backed them up. I picked up my phone and called Mason. He had been my junior analyst, quiet, diligent, loyal in the way that made him invaluable. He picked up after the second ring. "Hey, Mason. It's Nerisse." A long pause. I thought this might come. "I need your help," I said gently. "You were there. You remember who built that deck, who led the meetings. Just verify it. That's all." "I want to," he said, voice tight. "I really do. But Lucan's already talked to people. He's saying you acted independently, that you went rogue." "So what? If I fight back, I'm the problem?" He hesitated. "He's making it clear anyone who gets involved will regret it." I thanked him anyway. Hung up before the conversation could grow more pathetic. Tried a second colleague, then a third. Same answer, vague concern, fear laced with silence. Not only had they kicked me out, they locked the doors behind me and shouted, "She was never here." I called Melissa, my attorney. "They're prepping a defense," she said after I forwarded her the letter. "Classic repositioning. If you don't get ahead of it, they'll make it sound like you fabricated your role." I didn't take a dime from that deal. "And yet," she said, "they're charging you as if you did." I sat in my car for an hour that night, engine off, staring at the city lights through the windshield. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something slower, colder, more dangerous. By the next morning, I had drafted a formal dispute letter, certified mail. I outlined every discrepancy, cited emails, listed dates, reprinted sections from contracts they hadn't scrubbed completely. Then I made a second call, this time to a journalist I knew in Atlanta. "Don't use my name yet," I said, "but I have something, a story." "We don't do family drama," she replied flatly. "It's not family," I said. "It's corporate fraud, covered in nepotism and wrapped in PR. You in?" There was a pause, then, "Send me what you've got." I began printing, documents, screenshots, internal threads, meeting invites. I rented a storage unit 2 hours later. Something small, quiet, off record. I brought in a box of files and locked it with a padlock so old it squeaked. That became my vault, physical proof that I existed, that I'd built something no amount of edited narratives could undo. I wrote down everything I could remember from the Kensington deal. Every meeting, every name, every conversation where Lucan had sat silent while I answered every objection in that boardroom. "You don't fight power with noise," I told myself, sorting papers on the floor of that storage space. "You fight it with receipts." By nightfall, I had one binder full, organized, tabbed, categorized. I was no longer just collecting proof. I was preparing a case. I thought I had nothing left to lose, but they were about to remind me just how cruel power gets when it feels threatened. I wasn't surprised by the email. I was surprised it took them this long. It hit my inbox at 10:45 p.m., right as I was logging receipts into a spreadsheet I kept hidden on an encrypted drive. Subject line? Last warning. The message was short, no name, no signature. "You're making too much noise. You'll lose more than a job if you keep this up." I sat in the dark, the glow of my laptop casting light across an apartment that smelled like burnt toast and stale paper. I read the message again, then again, before clicking print. The paper hissed out of the printer like a whisper turning into a shout. I slid it into a folder labeled Threats, Volume 1. I forwarded the email to Melissa, my attorney, and texted her only one sentence. "I think it's starting. They thought threatening me would shut me down, but fear's a poor leash once the dog's already bitten." The next morning, I woke to a headline I didn't write. Breyer Group's vision, how they secured the 15-Mulder pivot deal. There was Lucan again on the cover of a regional business journal. He stood in a conference room I once led. The article was glowing, filled with phrases like strategic foresight and unmatched leadership. It even included screenshots from the original pitch deck, my pitch deck. Same animations, same phrasing, same pacing notes in the slide footer. My notes. Only now, every reference to the presenter had been changed to Lucan. His name was branded across the footer like some corporate watermark. I stared at the article in silence, then printed it, pinned it beside my bed. Not to remember the pain, to study the pattern. Later that afternoon, a Reddit thread surfaced titled, "Ex-employee of Breyer Group says deal was rigged." The post linked back to my LinkedIn statement. The comments ranged from curious to cutting. But then, one from an anonymous user with just enough detail to be real. I was there. She led the pitch. I saw the drafts. Then another. She was the architect. Lucan didn't touch that deck until she sent it. A direct message followed from a former Breyer board member whose name I won't say yet. You're right, but they control the narrative, for now. That night, I didn't write a post. I recorded a video. No filters, no script. Just me, in a gray sweatshirt, hair tied back, eyes steady. Let's talk about what it means to be erased by your own family. To have your voice used without your name, your ideas packaged under someone else's legacy. And let's talk about what happens when you stop asking for permission to tell the truth. I didn't post it, not yet. Melissa called the next morning. Don't retaliate publicly, she said. Let them keep talking. Every time they publish your work with his name, it strengthens your case. What do I do in the meantime? I asked. You document. Quietly. Strategically. They're arrogant right now. Let them keep leaving fingerprints. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. That afternoon, I sent Lucan an email. Subject: Attribution. Body: Thank you for confirming your authorship in public. I'll make sure it's cited accurately. In court. No greeting. No signature. A few minutes later, I saw that he'd viewed it. He didn't reply. They thought they were crafting their legacy. But the next headline wouldn't be written by PR. It would be sworn into record. The package didn't have a return address. Just my name, scrawled in quick handwriting that looked like it had been written in a hurry or in hesitation, like someone almost didn't send it. Inside was a padded envelope, the kind I used to send confidential drafts in. I peeled it open, careful, slow. A USB drive fell into my palm, matte black, no label. Just a folded note attached with a single piece of tape. You deserve to be remembered. Nze. Aliyah Zern. The intern. I plugged it into my laptop like it might bite me. A single folder popped up. BGT Pitch Full Footage Final. Org Meta. I clicked. There it was. My voice. My face. The original strategy pitch, complete with date stamps, metadata, timestamps, and audience reactions. I fast-forwarded. There were parts I'd forgotten, how confidently I answered questions, how I broke down their objections slide by slide. In the corner, Lucan sat in silence, nodding politely, but saying nothing of value. I stared at the screen, not blinking. I didn't cry, didn't speak. Then I pulled out my calendar and marked the date. The Breyer Group Annual Gala. Savannah Conservatory Ballroom. Black tie only, invite only. I wasn't invited. But I was going. That Friday, I didn't wear a statement necklace, didn't wear war paint, just black silk, clean lines, sharp heels, nothing more. I arrived 15 minutes after the cocktail hour started, long enough to turn heads, short enough to make them nervous. The ballroom smelled of orchids and wealth. String quartet playing something too refined to notice. Waiters in white jackets glided between small conversations. I recognized a few faces. People I used to brief before board meetings. Some offered me stiff smiles. Others looked away like I was a ghost in a house they'd already cleared. Lucan was already on stage, giving his acceptance speech. The screen behind him flickered with images of company milestones, including one that made my stomach turn. A mock-up slide of the Kensington deck, labeled with his initials. And thanks to our collective vision, he was saying, we've positioned Breyer Group for a decade of growth. This deal isn't just about revenue, it's about legacy. I walked calmly to the AV booth. The technician glanced at me. I leaned down. I need you to play this. After he's done. Exactly when I nod. He looked at the USB, then at me. I've got 120 seconds before the next award, he whispered. I only need 60. Lucan wrapped up with his usual humblebrag rhythm, waving slightly as the room applauded. Then the screen cut out. Silence. Then my voice filled the room. The original footage rolled. Unedited, time-stamped, watermarked with internal documentation. I was standing at the front of the room in the video, animated, clear, commanding. My name was on every slide. My voice carried every detail. Lucan, muted, passive, peripheral, sat off to the side. You could feel it. The shift. People glanced at each other. Someone whispered, "That's her," near the back. Isolde stood frozen, mouth slightly open. Lucan's cue card slipped from his hand and scattered across the stage floor. I didn't watch all of it. I turned and walked out before it ended. On the check-in table by the front doors, I left the USB in a small glass bowl for name tags. Taped to it was a note in my handwriting. This is what leadership looks like, unedited. By the time I reached the sidewalk, someone inside had started clapping. It wasn't polite. It wasn't confused. It was the sound of something cracking open. They couldn't clap the truth away. And that's when the real damage began. My phone buzzed before the sun even cleared the edge of the window. I rolled over, half expecting another spam alert or a generic newsletter. Instead, I saw 27 unread messages, 3 voicemails, 4 missed calls, and a link. The headline read, "Who really closed the Breyer deal?" I sat up slowly, pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, and clicked. A local Savannah business outlet had picked up the story. Not from me, not from my lawyer, but from the video, the one from the gala, the one I didn't need to narrate because it spoke for itself. There I was on screen, leading the pitch, fielding questions, calling shots, while Lucan sat quietly, sipping water and smiling like he'd done anything but copy and paste. I didn't need to shout. The truth had its own voice now. By mid-morning, it was everywhere. News aggregators had picked it up. Some blogs reposted it with their own spicy commentary. Family fraud. The Breyer breakdown, everyone's watching. My LinkedIn account was flooded with messages. A few congratulated me. Most just said what I had known for years. "I worked there. You were the brain behind that deal." "I remember the Kensington pitch. You carried that whole room." "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." I didn't reply. Not out of pride. Just fatigue. Justice has a weight to it when it finally lands. By noon, Melissa sent me a screenshot of Lucan's LinkedIn profile. The visionary leader tagline had been removed. The award announcement post was gone. His most recent update was from 5 months ago. Stale. He was unraveling. Quietly, Lucan called me 3 times that day, back to back. I let each one ring out. No voicemail, just silence followed by more silence. Around 2:30, Isolde texted, "You win. Hope it was worth it." I didn't respond. At 4 o'clock, Melissa emailed again. Subject, update on tax notice. Body, they've formally withdrawn the claim. No explanation. Just vanished from the system. That evening, the board of directors released a vague public memo. Leadership transitions pending internal review. Translated, Lucan was being suspended, not for ethics, not for theft, but pending. It didn't matter. The damage was done. You don't have to burn bridges if you can drown them with facts. Around sunset, I walked to Forsyth Park, needing the space. The cool breeze carried the smell of magnolia and roasted peanuts from a nearby vendor. I passed children shrieking around the fountain, couples bickering near benches, joggers weaving around strollers. The world hadn't stopped, and neither had I. I found a quiet bench under a sprawling oak and sat with my back straight and my hands clasped. No phone, no papers, just thoughts. I thought about Grandpa Abram. He would have hated the gala. Too formal, too loud, but he would have smiled when the video played. That soft, sideways grin he always gave when someone underestimated me and lived to regret it. "This isn't revenge," I whispered to myself. "It's restoration." I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hollow either. I was becoming someone who no longer waited for a seat at a crooked table. I was building my own, and I'd never once need to apologize for showing up. I wasn't waiting for an apology. But what came next, I never saw coming. The message came on a Sunday morning, just as I was folding laundry and debating whether to finally toss a pair of heels I hadn't worn since the Kensington pitch. It was from Bastion Rowe. "Saw what you did," the message began. That took guts. I know what it feels like to be cut from your own roots. I hadn't seen Bastian in 7 years. Not since my family pretended he didn't exist, after he dared to suggest that legacy could be built without bloodlines. He had been the first man I ever loved who didn't ask me to shrink for him, which, in my family, made him disposable. We agreed to meet at a small cafe near River Street, neutral ground, safe distance from the places that still smelled like betrayal. He was already seated when I walked in, taller somehow, calmer, no designer watch, no tie, just a man who'd learned to live without approval. "You look like you've been through it," he said, offering a quiet smile. I sat down across from him, wrapping my fingers around the warm ceramic of the coffee mug. "You're not wrong." We sat in that gentle, familiar silence for a while before he spoke again. "They tried to erase you because you were the one person who didn't need them to matter." I looked at him then, and something inside me softened, not out of romance, out of recognition. "They erased you too," I said. "Sure, but I let them. You didn't." He told me how he'd rebuilt, quietly, methodically. No billboards, no speeches, just work, just worth. He was running his own strategy firm now, small but stable, built on referrals and reputation, not favors or family names. "You didn't just win," he said. "You exposed how fragile their version of truth was." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until I heard it. I smiled, not the public kind, the private one I hadn't used in years. Later that night, back in my apartment, I pulled out an old hard drive from a box labeled Grandpa. I hadn't touched it since he passed. I clicked through audio files, each one dated in his handwriting. Meetings, notes, then one, simply labeled Legacy. His voice, gravelly and deliberate, filled the room. "Legacy isn't a monument, it's a mirror. What they say about you when you're gone. That's the echo. So make it true enough to last." I didn't cry out of pain. I cried because I understood him in a way I never had before. I wasn't just taking my name back. I was restoring his. The next morning, a letter arrived, stamped with Breyer Group's emblem. The language was clean, cautious, legal. "We acknowledge your contribution. We regret the oversight." Not an apology, a correction. That same afternoon, Isolde emailed, no subject line. "He's stepping down. For what it's worth, I knew it was yours." I read the message once, then again. Then I typed back a single line. "For what it's worth, I don't need it now." I clicked send and deleted the thread. They were trying to fix their history, but I was already rewriting mine. The first thing I did that morning was not open the email. It was sitting there. Lucan's name in the sender line. Subject, "Can we talk?" Unread. Below it, a second one from my mother. "Your father's not well. He's asking about you." I stared at both messages for a long while, the way you look at a door you're not sure you want to walk through. Then I closed the laptop and stood up. Not all invitations are meant to be accepted. Some are just proof they finally noticed the silence. It was a cool Monday in Savannah, crisp air streaming through my apartment window. I wrapped a scarf around my neck and headed to the office I had just signed a lease for the week before. No signage on the door yet, just a small stack of boxes, a clean whiteboard, and a fresh pack of dry erase markers. At the top of the board, in thick black letters, I had written one word: next. I stood in front of it for a moment, thinking about all the things I used to wait for. Apologies, explanations, the kind of closure that only exists in movies. And I realized something so simple it almost made me laugh. I didn't need any of it. I was no longer trying to earn a seat at tables built to make me beg. I pulled out my grandfather's quote from a notebook I'd kept since college. It had been written on the back of a receipt he'd stuffed into my textbook the night before my first internship interview. "There's nothing sad about walking away from a fire you didn't start." I sat at my desk and opened a blank Word document. At the top, I typed a short, private letter, not to send, just to release. To the version of me that thought she had to earn belonging by bleeding for it. "You're free now." I saved the file. Then I went through every contact in my phone related to the Breyer Group. Deleted them, one by one. Lucan, Isolde, HR, accounting, marketing. Then I opened social media and unfollowed every family member who had chosen silence over decency, not out of anger, out of clarity. But I kept one photo on my desk, Grandpa Abram and me, standing in front of the old storefront he used to run. We were both smiling. That was the legacy I chose to keep. By mid-afternoon, the sun had started warming the window. A breeze carried the scent of roasted peanuts from the street vendor across the block. I pinned a new note to my corkboard, just above my desk. Legacy isn't inherited, it's constructed. The phone rang. A voice I didn't recognize greeted me, shaky but bright. Hi, is this Nerisse? I saw your video. I read your story. I just graduated, and I've been looking for a company that actually stands for something. Are you hiring? I paused for a second, feeling the weight of all the roads behind me, all the fires I had walked through to get to this one call. Yes, I said, smiling. We're building something better. I didn't need forgiveness. I needed forward. 2 weeks after the gala, I walked into a glass-walled conference room on the 27th floor of a law firm in downtown Atlanta. Not as a visitor, not as a witness, as a stakeholder. The room was immaculate. Crisp white folders lined along the table, polished silver carafes filled with coffee no one dared pour yet. I didn't need the caffeine. I was already charged. At the head of the table, a leather-bound document sat waiting. Its pages outlined the terms of Lucan's official resignation from the board and the rescinding of my NDAs. Every gag order I had signed during my time at Breyer Group, now null and void. But the real prize was tucked in the middle, full rights to a spin-off brand based on the Kensington framework, the one I had created from scratch. They never expected I'd come back not to beg, but to take what was mine. And more. Lucan wasn't in the room, of course not. He'd made his exit quietly, shielded by a press release that talked of new ventures and a transition into thought leadership. Translated, a forced departure dressed in a tuxedo. As I flipped through the final pages, I glanced at the addendum, a licensing agreement. Breyer Group would now pay me a monthly sum to use the system I had designed. My system. They stole the ladder. I built the building. The pen felt heavy in my hand, but steady. My signature didn't shake. I left the meeting without a single word of ceremony. No one clapped. No one handed me flowers. That was fine. I wasn't here for applause. I was here for closure. The next day, headlines whispered the news with professional detachment. Lucan Breyer announces departure from Breyer Group. Internal shifts suggest shareholder pressure prompted leadership change. Isolde Breyer steps down from PR board quietly. None of them mentioned my name. But that didn't matter. A week later, I appeared on the cover of a respected business magazine. The caption read, "She didn't just survive betrayal, she built an empire in spite of it." And that felt better than justice. That weekend, I drove back to a corner of Savannah I hadn't visited since I was a girl. My grandfather's old retail lot sat tucked between a barber shop and a sandwich deli, the bricks weathered but intact. I stepped out with a hammer and nails and hung a sign above the doorway. Callaway Strategies, est by vision, not permission. Inside, I placed a copy of Lucan's award, the one he had once paraded at gala halls and board meetings, the one that had been legally rescinded. Then, without ceremony, I fed it into a shredder. No anger, no hesitation. I didn't take back what they stole. I made it obsolete. I locked up, stepped outside, and let the door close behind me with a soft thud that felt like punctuation. A full stop. And as I walked toward my car, I knew there was no chapter left to reopen, no conversation I needed to have, no seat I needed to reclaim. If they wanted me forgotten, they should have picked someone quieter, because once you find your voice, you don't go back to whispering.